you, Mukti. I appreciate again being here. It's such a great dialogue to have. So thank you.
Wonderful, Barbara. Well, we had a wonderful talk in our first podcast, and a lot of people really showed interest and they really appreciate what we are initiating and what we are really talking and sharing. The world needs peace builders, and the world needs change and transformative leaders like yourself. I really appreciate your work. So let's continue with our second podcast discussion here.
Perfect.
In our first podcast, you spoke about bringing love of creation into finance, and you described a little bit about that into practices, how it looks like. So, will you elaborate more? How do we move from the extractive finance to
Mhm.
transformative or creative finance?
Well, I think it's kind of a multi-pronged approach. I think, first of all, you have to have a mindset change, okay? Because the tools, you can change tools easily enough. That's not a difficult thing. But I've always seen it kind of as a three-pronged approach beyond creating a new tool to actually enable that to transpire through with the intentionality of that, as well as a mindset shift. And that's the biggest thing we need to consider when we're engaging all of this, because if we go about trying to create the future with the same mindset, we're going to get to the same place we were before. So you need to actually open up your understanding of different ways to seeing things and stepping outside of your own silos, so to speak, and also kind of your own how you have everything siloed in life and what you think you understand about things. We all have been taught a lot of things, we're finding out right now that a whole lot of that isn't necessarily the truth. So that opens up a whole lot of opportunities to create something new, real time, together. And I think the last part of that would be a policy change as well, to be able to inspire a different way of engaging together, particularly regarding and supporting our innovators, our inventors, our visionaries.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. Where we all are dumped with a lot of information, and but we don't know how to practice that, or think about outside of the box and create a different model or different system for peace and transformative finances. Yeah, that's really wonderful. Mm, you also mentioned about M&A, merger and acquisitions, in your book that has led the corporate consolidation and power centralizations. Mm, will you explain a little bit about that merger, acquisition, and power centralizations versus decentralizations?
Okay. Yeah, I can say so for the last 70 years or so, we've had policy that goes back to 1919, but what really made all this kind of get really intense towards a centralized kind of dynamic as far as power is this whole merger acquisition model that's been perpetuated in the venture capital industry model.
Hmm.
It's just a model. I'm not talking about the people. I really want to clarify that because it's the systems and structures that we need to shift. Because there's a lot of well-meaning people in every sector. But that sector has driven every time, if you have an invention and I decide I'm going to fund you as a venture capital person, right now, the general system that's a multi-trillion dollar sector is a forced acquisition or a forced going public. So you lose the sovereignty of your own company and your own innovation generally in the current model. But what that really does is after 70 years at this point, almost 100 years going on,
Hmm.
almost. Anyway, since the 70s, basically you have endless merger acquisition after merger acquisition, merger acquisition. You're going to end up with four or five companies running the world, which is kind of what we've got right now. So that's never boded well for human freedom. And it's not about, again, it's the systems that evoke behavior. We got to understand that the systems that we've been being a part of and also perpetuating over all these years has really driven us in a certain direction. And the beauty of right now is that everything is getting exposed about really what's not working, and we can sit around and point fingers about it, or we can actually realize, geez, we're all kind of part of this in one way or another. So how can we actually create something different and be part of something different that drives us towards something better? Because humanity has a range, a continuum of behavior, good, bad, light, dark, whatever you want to call that. And a lot of our systems have driven us towards this one direction. But most people, it's just the system you have to participate in, you know. I mean, we can change the system. But again, to your earlier question, you know, it's the mindset shift. Wow, you know, if we actually start honoring our innovators in this whole financial system, what kind of world could we create with that? You know, that's intriguing to me, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah, well, that's focus. Well, what we discussed earlier, love of creation, and then the finance should be part of creating love and also the peace, right? And that's the system you're talking about.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about how important it is to decentralize, and obviously it contribute to the peace. So can you talk a little bit about this model that impact the peace?
Yeah, because I mean, you and I learned that in Rwanda and Nepal with our work with Contact in the Peace Builders through um, Paula Green and Olivia Dreyer. I mean, that work was profound for me to understand how peace does not happen when there's an power imbalance. So the key is to actually enable a rebalancing of those power dynamics. And so you need something that organically does that while you're achieving something else, right?
Mhm,
So for my world, which is finance, it's like we're investing and supporting different inventors, but at the same time, we're also organically driving towards a very different system that will rebalance power dynamics. If you think about the natural world, there's a natural balance that occurs, you know, and that there's a great example about that in Yellowstone where they took away the wolves and everything became completely unbalanced in the Yellowstone ecosystem.
mhm,
And then they realized they started introducing wolves back, and then everything rebalanced. Okay. And so that's how the natural world works, which we happen to be living in as well. We keep forgetting that, but we're in a natural dynamic. And
mhm,
so when you allow people to have free will and free choice as an inventor or a visionary, if they want to stay sovereign and private, or if they want to go public, or if they want to get acquired, that's for the inventor and their team and the investors to decide together what is the most appropriate thing for that company. And when you do that over time, you're balancing not just the dynamic within the company itself, but also all the community surrounding those companies, the economies around those companies. You know, you're rebalancing all kinds of things, and there will be a natural evolution to those that choose, you know, going public and getting sold or
mhm,
staying private. And so that will naturally distill itself out over time. But you need a system that enables that to do that. And that's what I created with the Sovereign Revenue Trust Entity, the
mhm,
SRT. That's the intention behind that. There's a lot of intentions behind that because it rebalances power. And you do this all through love of creation. I mean, it's something we haven't ever really talked about in finance in this way. And so I think the opportunities that it opens, the more you think about it and the more you kind of deconstruct it, it just shifts so many things at once. And it's a very simple shift. The key, though, is the mindset shift.
mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a very, very good point you mentioned about the nature and the animal being part of the natures and how the ecosystems in nature run. But looking at the centralized system that the world is into, now we feel that there's a need of shift from what is centralized to decentralized, and that contribute to peace. And you also mentioned about SRTE. That's a very important part here. Well, there are many enthusiasm from the listener. They were like, "What is this model? What is
Mhm.
SRTE?" I think it would be a good time for you to refer and describe a little bit about the model, and if you can, how does this model work, and in this present scenario.
Yeah, well, I'll back up and I'll just say, I'm sorry, I've got to hear them. In the current system, you have the equity model, right? So people invest in something, they get an equity piece of the company with the illusion they have some sense of control, which is illusory, honestly. But that's the current system, and then that goes eventually onto the stock market, and then it's traded on the open system and it behaves that way. But generally, a lot of those inventors have sold out to be able to actually provide a return for their investors. I'm sorry. So that's usually kind of how it's gone over these last years since the 70s. And what I'm proposing is a structure that is imbibed with a very different intention, which is love and honor and respect. for the inventor. But what it really does is provide, it's a tool, it's a legal structure that's patent pending. I can speak about it to some degree, but it's patent pending, so you understand that. But it's a legal structure that enables an inventor to have free will and free choice to be able to express through that structure that when they take funding in as an inventor, they're not forced to do something. Okay, so that sovereignty, everybody's talking about sovereignty globally, but it starts with the individuals, which we all want, is our individual sovereignty, our ability to self-direct, right? But we haven't had that for our inventors. And so you think about that, all the new innovation coming through goes through this structure that completely removes the ability of self-direction for an inventor and their company
Yeah.
and the investors that engage that. So that you need is a new system. It's just a simple alternative to the equity structure that you have in the current stock system. So
Mhm.
it could really create a parallel market of this other structure. It's a legal structure that gives choice for either to be in a revenue share or equity or a mix of whatever, however that is, but it's not forced anymore. So that sounds really small, but we have, like I said, there's a $4 trillion sector-ish of venture capital. And where is the revenue share model that is comparable to that? Where is that? I mean, there are revenue shares in very different scenarios and different and sectors, but there's never been an institutionalized way to do that. And so that's what the SRTE is. And that really is in the actual investment dynamics of a funder with an inventor. Okay, that's where this all transpires. It's right at the beginning in the entrepreneurial realm where this sellout is required to move things forward. And that corrupts all innovation right from the get-go because that makes it all about money. And going back to the 1919 scenario I mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
um, these whole concepts of how we define fiduciary responsibility, which is the highest return for investors, period. And
Mhm.
then investor primacy, which was investors above everything else. Well, when you frame it like that, and then you create legal structures that drive that, what are you gonna drive towards? To what we have now, which is a very greed-based system.
Mhm.
And like I said, I'm not interested in pointing fingers. I'm interested in saying, look, is this what we want? And can we do something different? The
Mhm.
answer is yes. And as we engage that together and educate ourselves about this together, we can make a choice that really takes us a very different direction for humanity.
Mhm.
We can drive towards our own liberation, our own freedom. And you do that by liberating the innovators and honoring the innovators first in the entrepreneurial sector regarding the financial realm. I'm just speaking financial realm.
Mhm.
But again, the financial realm impacts every other sector. What's driven healthcare? What's driven energy? What's driven all these things? It's all this financial dynamic. And that's a lot of people understand money corrupts, so to speak, right? But it's our relationship with money and how we develop structures around money that corrupts. We don't have to have it that way. We can have money as a tool, which it is, it's a neutral tool. And if you have systems that actually serve the evolution of humanity, you've got a whole different ballgame. It's
Mhm.
not it's not as hard as we think. And the power of the people is where this comes into play. I mean, because the more people stepping up and choosing a different direction to both invest and yeah, how they invest and how what they want to perpetuate through those investments beyond just the return. Those are important considerations to have, and you needed a choice to be able to do that. Again, so that's what I provided with this sovereign revenue trust entity,
Yeah,
SRTE.
that's very wonderful concept. Let's dive into a deeper understanding where what's the difference between the public limited companies now, and what it looks like the system of SRTE. Will that contribute to the public limited people who are coming together for
Are you
this?
talking? So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, for people who are coming together, and there is another model called social impact investment, right? So how do you distinguish or differentiate SRTE with these models that are emerged in
Yeah. No, I mean, all these endeavors are really great to actually get us thinking differently. So I applaud that for sure. What I did that's different, what the SRTE does that's different is it's actually providing a legal structure intentionally
Mhm.
to make that happen through. A lot of these other approaches are a bunch of rules, like we're going to do this, 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 and this. And it's like, well, that's great. Um, but it's a different approach. I'd rather people be inspired to support something um, to make a change rather than having another, we have so many regulations in the current financial sector that work to some degree and not to other degrees, right? So a lot of that rule-based approach is I don't know, it feels like old paradigm kind of stuff to me to a certain degree when there's a lot of those rules are put into place. So the new paradigm is really to inspire and evoke change and want people to participate. But the current, investment structure is all through that equity play.
Hmm.
Okay. And it's that whole system that's already where all you have to do is watch the news and watch the business news, and you can hear all about what's going on the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 and all of that. That's all publicly traded companies. It started way back by some inventor who had a really good idea, right? And you don't hear much about those inventors
Yeah.
generally, as you hear about the discussions of how to make the most money on the stock market. That's not the discussion. The discussion is how to manipulate and engage these dynamics, right? And that is the natural thing to do in the system that was created.
Mhm.
So create a different system, right? Where you're actually I've always seen it this way because again, this is a new approach. It's getting launched. We're talking about all this right now, and so I've been working 8 years on this, and as that gets launched and more people begin to participate in it, what it addresses is it can create another market where you have companies that people invested in. If they want to get in or out, they can do so, but it's not going through a system. It would be based on very inherent value because it will be blockchain based primarily. Um, because of that, you will be able to actually understand what's going on in the company, have a lot more transparency in those various companies as a private investor in a private company.
Mhm.
And then, eventually, as more people use this, you will be able to participate in moving in and out of companies as you choose, but it will be based on an inherent value. It's a very different value system um, than what we do now.
Mhm.
Does that make sense to you?
Oh yeah, it makes sense. So, well, as a peacepreneur, where our concept also is, well, promoting peace, right, through whatever actions we perform or we do, right? And if you're starting something as a venture, does it provide peace to all concerned,
Well,
including
it drives it.
investor, yeah, including the investor as well as uh, the stakeholders engaged, and then the final consumer or the client or the service recipient, right?
Right. Well,
Mm.
that's what I wanted to ask you because a lot of the questions are coming to me, but this is the introduction of your idea too, Mukti, which is so beautiful. And I would be very curious for you to explain what you envision with the Peacepreneurs and what that's about for you.
Well, there's a kind of like breeze, or I see the connections between your model, right? You mentioned about the nature, and you mentioned, well, if everyone involved are receiving the resources like the animals in nature, and they're happy there, right? They have their own power struggles, but it's not that challenging for survival. It sometimes could be a survival, but we don't live in the animal world. We are human being, right? And the resources should be kind of shared as per their need, right? And everyone should have access to the resources, and they shouldn't be struggling enough. So that the control of the resources are with very few people, the 2% of the populations of the world. No.
Yeah.
So how can we have a system that create the equal distributions, or could be mm, sustainable distributions for one family or individuals, or. So that's what I'm thinking, where they can have a peaceful and happy life, so that they don't have to, if you look into the developing countries, people are dying, they're not getting medicines. If you look into the developing country, there's war. There are countries that are suffering. There are people who are suffering, not having resources. You mentioned about health, you mentioned about education, you mentioned about the Sustainable Development Goals, what the UN has shown.
Mhm.
So where does this come? So that's why we need to create the system. So that you mentioned
Yeah.
that system, the financial model system that promote or that transform the current system into having resources to those people who doesn't have that. If you
Well, I'm speaking very specifically about the investment dynamic. I mean, I'm speaking very particularly about that particular world because it's the entrepreneurial world is what I'm talking about. Does it have implications for peace? Hugely, because it's rebalancing power dynamics over time, or it will. It just simply makes sense when you follow it from a logical perspective. You know, like I said, there's been good efforts, but they haven't been successful. Why haven't they been successful? Because they haven't understood the true or engaged the true core of what's really driving a lot of these behaviors. And so until you address that at the core level, you're not going to be able to affect change. And I really like the idea of the solution coming from the people.
Mhm.
And the meek shall inherit the earth. You know, I grew up with that. So that always stuck with me my whole life. It's like, what was he talking about? What was Christ talking about at that time? And I pondered that my whole life, you know, and I realized, wow, the only real viable long-term dynamic is through the individuals, the power of the people being
Yeah,
able to rise, but they need a way to actually affect change through systems that actually support that.
yeah,
And as they support things they care about, they can also, like I said, organically resolve a lot of these power imbalances that lead to conflict and chaos. So it's more of an individual approach, but it's collective at the same time.
mhm. Yeah, well, we start from somewhere, and this is the model. Well, why I come into, if you look into me, I come
Mhm.
from humanities background, right? I did a lot of international development and social work and social welfare or social transformation work in developing countries. I worked for peace for so many years, like for 15 years, and I realize I think there should be the combinations between peace and business. And you mentioned about business model or the entrepreneurial model or the venture model, right? And I think that's where the connections is established. Uh, so we also talk about conflict is profit in our first podcast, and we say can't peace be the profit? So I think that's where we are connecting our dots.
Yeah,
Your
that's
venture
true.
capitalist model, or the SRTE model, to establish peace. Mm,
You did.
yeah, when I was working in the peace
Support
building
that.
sector, our program, the most of the challenges I faced was getting funding for the peace building programs.
Well, this is an organic way to actually work towards that from a different perspective. And that's what's interesting to me, because like you're saying, it's connecting these dots and these sectors that really haven't played together before, you know. And as we do that, new opportunities come up as far as employment there just alone, because it's like, you know, maybe those skill sets can be applied in a different way. You know, I had mentioned to you earlier about potentially some of the military, you know, the retired military that very much they committed their lives to peace, to build peace and protect. And, you know, when they leave that system, war is very painful on a human soul. I mean, we knew it called it what do you call it, shell shocked in the First World War, you know? That PTSD has been around for a really long time because it's hard on the human soul to be engaging in that. And what I was thinking, and I proposed this to you as well, beyond the peace builders actually engaging and help deal with a lot of different business dynamics. As you resolve those different challenges within the relationships in the businesses, you're helping to drive towards peace. It's a different angle on things. And as I reflect more about that, you know, I think about who are the other people that really understand the consequence of what war is and would want to work towards peace with profound skill sets of building teams, trust, you know, working relationally and understanding various cultures. Those things are things that really haven't been brought together in the finance world. Um, in this way, I mean, there's executive coaching and all that sort of thing, which is profound. I'm a certified coach myself. But it's an interesting thing to consider bridging these different skill sets in different ways. And it's more interesting. It's more interesting way to actually explore different expressions of what you intended as a peace builder. As
Mhm.
me, I'm in business, but my concern is peace, and living the kind of life that we all want to live on this planet. So how do we actually make that happen through creating new structures and maybe changing the angle on what we're currently doing just a little bit, just a little shift. And then we're all more working together towards something very different. I think it's a compelling idea to share and talk about and explore together.
But there has been a lot of work actually. Well, the idea of corporate social responsibilities, right? Well, how do you see that with SRTE model?
Corporate responsibility.
Yeah, corporate social
I,
responsibility model. Yeah.
no, I don't, while I appreciate the intentions of a lot of those, I don't use those words in my work because it's not where I really am coming from. It's about what values do you want us to support? You invest in a way that it honors that.
Hmm.
You choose technologies or inventors that
Hmm.
are bringing things that actually drive towards that. And it's that simple. Again, I'm not a big rule person. I'm more about set up a structure. If you like supporting something that enables, food production without chemicals or any number, changing the way you do health, any of these things, healthcare, food, whatever, to actually support the health of humanity and the planet. Um, if you get behind that and you're doing it through a structure that is honoring that intention behind that inventor that's bringing these solutions, that's the way to do it without all this bureaucratical dynamic. I'm not interested in that.
Hmm.
It adds a layer of complexity, and more complexity makes everything more challenging. And so it's just so simple. We can do this in a much simpler way, directly with the power of the people and the inventors, and we co-create a new world together. That's how I see that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, most of the investors or entrepreneurs, well, in this modern world, are taught to be profit oriented, right? And so now what we as a peacepreneur are kind of like sharing is why not peace be the end result of the enterprise or entrepreneurs'
Oh,
ideas?
put that in. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're talking about. And you're as a professor, and, I'm talking to other professors as well, and,
Mhm.
bringing this into the educational system, particularly, in the graduate school or in business, entrepreneurial business schools, to be able to start shifting the way we think about how we support our innovators on this planet. As
Mhm.
you start inculcating that into the minds of people to consider these other, it's a more global dynamic that you're understanding, and the power that you have to be able to affect change in such a positive way. I see that coming in through education.
Mhm.
I mean, I've written two books that the third's about to come out. They're small books. They're small, simple books to help just consider a new way of thinking. I'm really asking about to consider a new way to perceive reality, how you becoming aware of how you perceive reality. And when you open yourself up to change that a little bit, all kinds of things change, all kinds of opportunities arise. And so as we teach that, um, a new way of thinking, a new way of exploring, our own spirit, so much of what people, you come in as a child and you're taught to follow the rules, and the rules are important. Rule of law is important. That's not what I'm talking about. Somewhere the spirit of creation and all of that gets squelched along the way. And so how do we reignite that? How do we then honor that through the structures we're creating? And how do you educate people um, as they're thinking about engaging business in a way that, is actively thinking about peace as the outcome? That's interesting. I mean, you're doing that with what you're teaching, Mukti, and the various professors I speak to regarding, this concept of peace. That's very much a commitment. And so, again, people get to decide what they want to do on their own terms and their own timing. And so,
Yeah.
but educating about these other opportunities and having a tool through which that can transpire, and then even providing a tool so that policy could be changed as an institutionalized dynamic. That's a multi-pronged approach to be able to affect and drive real change.
Hmm. A change is possible, and we can bring in peace as a profitable model, which we are hoping to. Well,
I don't think we've even begun to understand what true abundance looks like because we've been doing it through this contracted idea that's a fear-based model in the end. It's a fear-based lack model. And it's driving all this greed and all these things, but that's a model. We know what that does.
yeah.
Explore another.
Yeah, we already see that. Well, right. We are getting the mortgages and the finance model that put people on pressure, and the amount of stress and the amount of unhappiness and the amount of conflict they do have in their interpersonal life uh, is tremendous. Despite what we are talking here, the system that is putting people on pressures and on problems, right?
Right.
It's tremendous. It's huge. I see by 2030, more and more people will have mental problems because of the stress and pressures and fear, and the system that really put individual under the vicious cycles of mortgage and pay to paychecks, right?
There's too many people working it around the world to change systems. You get to choose what reality you believe in.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to participate in that reality. I'm going to participate in co-creating a different reality. And the people, everybody gets to make their choice about what they want to participate in and drive towards. So that's where our free will is
Mhm.
so powerful. We
Yeah.
can buy into that old thing, or we can create something new and explore it together and have tremendous joy and excitement and fulfillment.
Mhm.
Um, we can create a new system as easily as the old ones were created.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to reclaim our power, our individual power. We
Mhm.
have the ability to make choice through our free will. And that sovereignty is really important to be able to affect that free will.
Mhm.
Very important. And
Yeah.
so that's why all of these, it's all intertwined together. It's all intertwined together. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, in corporate world, the founder syndromes are very, where you did mention about that, right? How it
The
in
founder syndrome, yeah, that's more in entrepreneurial world.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, founder syndrome, it's a real issue, because like me, I'm totally passionate about what I'm doing and I have a vision. But I also have to understand my own limitations as far as my skill sets. Like you have emotional intelligence, all these different capacities. And and I see the Peaks Builders helping in that respect to really help develop that emotional intelligence of the founder, but also to be able to receive information, receive criticism in a way that's constructively done. Um, and that can help because a lot of companies fail because of any number of reasons, lack of funding, the team doesn't work, the whatever, things don't work within a company. And so you need to be able to have a way to communicate together and receive and give constructive criticism and support in a way that is beneficial towards driving towards a particular positive outcome. And so bringing in those peace builder skills, peace intentioned skills, to actually make sure that that inventor's vision is manifested in a way that really serves that vision, but also all the people involved with it, the team as well as the investors. So that's a big issue. It's called founder syndrome, and so I see those two groups I mentioned earlier as potential very interesting people beyond the executive coaches, the peace builders, and also ex-military that were really you know, taught to understand the value of building relationship and how, nobody likes to receive negative feedback. I mean, it's no fun, right? So how can you do that with grace, with an understanding that you have a mutual shared goal, which is the success of that entrepreneur, of that inventor and that visionary. When you come and you understand everybody's on the same page there, and then you work together to work through problems, those skill sets become crucial.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, we all need to be an executive coach where we will also try to enhance, empower the peace building and the concept of peace building
Right.
executives, CEOs, and leaders, right? And so that they know, they understand the end results here is peace.
Yeah, there are great people doing that work out there. That's why I know it's feasible. This isn't a big stretch, this whole thing. It's not a big stretch. People are doing pieces of this. Bring them all together. Interesting.
Yeah. But there are a lot of work. So our role here is, as my role as a peacepreneur, bringing those people and say their words and interview them or have a kind of healthy discussions to let the whole world know what is being done and how far they are in their work as well. So peace is possible. That's how we want to, create this podcast series to let the world know about the peace work all around the globe, from developing countries, from small initiative to large initiative.
Yeah, the indigenous cultures. I mean, tremendous wisdom there, tremendous wisdom. And and those cultures haven't forgotten the interconnectedness of themselves with everything,
Hmm.
with this natural world, the cosmos, everything. They've not forgotten that. And so, tremendous resource there. We all have tremendous resources, and all the people that have done peace building from various institutions and whatnot before, all of that is not lost. It's just simply we all need to move together into a different um, way of kind of, we don't need to recreate the wheel of the old system. We can create a new wheel entirely and bring all those things to bear. You know, I'm offering this solution. I'm sure there will people those other solutions as well, but I've done a lot of the legwork on this one over the last 8 years to start building awareness that there is a different way to do this. There is a tool that's being provided to do this.
Hmm.
Um, and and that will, all come about in appropriate timing. I trust the divine plan on all this. I truly do. I,
Yeah.
mm,
You did mention about SRTE that helps the wounds, pain and suffering of war with veterans and ex-military with PTSD. Can you share more about how it can help?
yeah, I mean, I've thought about that a lot because, warriors dedicated their lives to protect us.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of wounds, mental, physical, across the board that occurs as a result of that sacrifice. And what I realized over time, it's like, is there another way that they can contribute to peace um, with their skill sets, like I mentioned earlier, in a new way that actually helps drive towards their goal, which is to protect and heal. Um, they can heal themselves potentially in a new way through engaging a different way to achieve peace,
Hmm.
through something that's healing instead of the old approach of conflict. It's a transmutation, so to speak, of that intention that can potentially heal them as well. That's how I've seen it. I just feel that. Um, it's something I've thought about a lot. Yeah. Same with the peace builders. I mean, the peace builders, their whole mission, that whole mission was to create peace. And so, is there a way we can transmute just a little bit each of what we've done into something together that acts from love and nobility of the human spirit?
Hmm.
Um, I think we can do that. Mhm.
Yeah, you see the globe, there are a lot of conflicts and we came through the past conflict as well, right? So I think there are more and more healings and more wounds of war that need to be healed.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great way if this model really eh, heals those wounds, and I think we should really make it happen.
There's a
And
potentiality through that. And you and I mean, we were in Rwanda during those courses, and I mean, there was a Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Africa, South Africa, and we watched the gachachas real time, some of them in Rwanda. And so understanding how to bring people together where they cause great harm to one another is a profoundly it's an extraordinary thing to witness, um, and and the way through all of this is through the heart. It's through healing the heart and understanding everybody does things for a particular reason, but a lot of what drives it is to love and be loved in the end, and we're driven in different ways for different paths in our lives, and understanding that each of us came in with something that was really special. And if we can support each other in finding that and moving that forward, that's a world I'd want to live in.
Yeah, well, my understanding and my reflection when we were in Rwanda was where there were people who were intentionally willing to forgive and willing to accept what they have committed, right? And but how do you know the intention of a wrongdoer or someone who has a habit of doing the same repetitions of work or repetitions of same actions? That was a kind of a very reflective analysis for myself, right? How do we create the intentional mindsets of those people who are into different accents? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a challenging thing because at some point, a lot of those things cause a lot of pain
Hmm.
to yourself and others. So as you realize, at some point you come to the realization that, gee, I don't think I want to do this anymore, but how do I change that? So how can we support people to make those changes?
Yeah. Well,
It's
sometimes, yeah.
all life is an education. It's a journey and endless opportunity to change directions. Endless.
Yeah, it could be part of the societies as well, right? If I want to change and okay, suppose I change from and then my accent shows that I'm changed, but if society start looking at me, oh, this is the guy who did this, right? And whole if society started accusing or calling the past actions over him or her, right, to the individual, and what is the probability of that person's intentions to us change will continue.
Well, those are the spiritual teachings, right, about forgiveness. And forgiveness is the way through for the perpetrator and the the person who was the victim. I mean, forgiveness is the way through of self. Forgiveness of self and forgiveness of other is the really only way to free yourself if you want to be free, because otherwise you're caught in the old past. And the past isn't now. It's now is now. Present is now. You can change anything in the now. So it's a decision to hold on to the past or a decision to move forward. And that's an individual choice and individual timing.
Hmm.
And if we can create systems that support that, we can do that. We've already been doing that. Let's just amp it. Let's let's do it through finance. What a wild idea that is, you
Yeah.
know? Why not?
Yes, that's for sure. Well, having a resources, which having access to the resources and the system that support the change and transformations will obviously help,
Multi-pronged.
yeah, help individuals to
But
come
just
to pro,
even
yeah,
having a conversation, Mukti, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
yeah.
But just having this conversation will it inspires my thinking as well in different ways. And just having conversations like this inspire new ideas and new thinking about how we could go about doing these things.
Mm.
We're all part of this together. We're all alive on this planet now together.
Yeah.
We can make a lot of change.
Yeah, well, when we talk about peace, people really think peace is an abstract or utopian concept or something like that. Um,
Well,
but
as abstract as war.
yeah, but when I talk with people, the real people, the millionaire or who have an abundance of resources, right? And they say, well, the ultimate, what I want is peace. I did so many things. I earn money, right? The resources was I have nothing to really regret on, but there's abundance resources. But what I'm now aiming is to gain peace. So looking at it, it's not abstract. Everyone wants peace. Uh,
Last thing, when you're leaving this planet, do you want to be in a place of peace or do you want to be in a different place? I would choose peace.
mm-hmm,
Um, Peace in my heart, peace in my spirit. So how do you create a life and engage in things that create that?
mm-hmm,
That's conscious living, conscious awareness of the choices you make, from the decisions you make. And there's consequences you learn. There are consequences to everything. And so choose wisely. And if you want peace, do things that would drive towards that. These have been, these are spiritual traditions. Every spiritual tradition talks about this sort of thing.
yeah.
We're a multidimensional being. We're a physical body. We're a spirit and a mind. And but when you're leaving this planet, how do you want to go out? You can control that. You can decide that today and make choices from that point on, driving towards that. That's that's empowered. That's an empowered life.
Mm-hmm,
It doesn't have to be big. Everybody thinks it's got to be this big dramatic thing. I've had people along the way that have supported, just people in restaurants that I would go to. Often they'd ask about the books or how's the platform coming. And those things mattered so much to me when I was in a lot of I had moved to Florida not long ago, and I didn't know anybody down here. A couple of people on either side. That's it, of the state. And so I didn't know anybody. And so those individual statements of encouragement, I can't tell you what they meant to me. They meant a lot to me because it's a lonely road a lot of the time, bringing something forward. It's a very lonely road. Um, when you see something that maybe other people aren't seeing yet, it's hard, and you try to convey it and they don't know what you're talking about. And so um, it's a lonely time. And so those words of encouragement, just that little seemingly is giant to somebody else. It was giant to me. I can speak to that. Mattered.
yeah.
It's just the little gestures, you know? So
Yeah, well, very exciting and very, very well, filled with hope. So we believe that the systems will work and will transform what we aim to achieve in a long run. Well, so you also acknowledge about the pain of waking up the heart's truth, right? What practices help people move through the cognitive dissonance or from cognitive dissonance to a human being, right? Into a purposeful actions to create peace.
well, you know, it's a hard thing to see things you don't want to see.
Hmm.
It's a hard thing to wake up to some things that are being perpetuated on the planet you weren't aware of. And um, it's very painful. So I think for me, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for other people.
Hmm.
For me, I wanted to know what the truth was. So in my commitment to the truth, I was willing to let go of what I thought I knew.
Hmm.
These are big challenges, but that was my choice. And so in doing that, because I can't put forth a solution if I don't understand the problem I'm actually addressing. You got to understand the problem. What is the problem? And that's what I spent 20 years going around the globe talking to people dealing with these different sectors and trying to understand the mindsets of where people were coming from, you know, and how they were seeing the problem, the lens through which they were seeing these problems. Um,
Yeah.
but that commitment to truth for me was the door that opened up a lot of things. And it's hard to let go of ideas. I mean, when I worked with this one particularly French quantum physicist, the first time thing he told me is if you're getting involved with anything we're doing, you have to understand everything you've been told is a lie.
Hmm.
I'm thinking, what's he talking about? In the end, we're seeing a lot of things that are being exposed right now, and it's painful. And so I think understanding we've all been part of this, we've been on this planet for however long we've been on it. and we've been exposed to the systems that are here. So we don't really have another way to see things because it's the way that's been. So
Right.
that's the way things are. But that's not true. Things can change. And so understand we have the power to affect that change, um, and have compassion for one another as we're coming to a new understanding of what the truth is on this planet. Um, that's really powerful. And that goes back to love again, love and compassion. I didn't know any of this, 10 years ago of what I know now. And it's been such an education, very, very painful. And there were times because I did it proactively, at least I could say, okay, had enough. I don't really want to know about anything for a while. I could do that, but I understand a lot of, it's painful. But through that, you can free yourself. So
Yeah, you
if
can
you want to be free and know the truth, it's worth it. It's worth it for me. I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, it was worth it. No question.
yeah, we understand what truth is, right? And one has to be very honest about uh, oneself, and everyone carries
Yeah.
stories. Everyone has their own stories. They carry their own stories, and unless and until we understand the true side of it, we can't really, you can't really understand the pain that they are carrying, and then if you can't understand the pain, you can't really transform or mm, change. So it's more like being yourself, honest and truth. I
Yeah.
think will lead to the transformation, right?
And
And
I would say that the more personal the work that I've done over the years to understand, everybody's got stuff. Okay. We all have things that we don't necessarily like about ourselves,
yeah.
would like to improve, but you have to be honest in looking at it. It's like, okay, everybody has this. Everybody has something. Look under the rocks. There's stuff. Okay. And so as you learn to look at that with compassion towards yourself, understanding why did I behave in a particular manner? What was driving that? And when you look further back, far enough back into that, you understand, oh, wow, that I was just wanting something, love, attention, whatever, fill in the blank. And then when you do that more and more, you can learn to forgive yourself, for choices you've made that weren't ideal. And then it also helps you have more compassion for other people doing that too.
Hmm.
Um, so it's what Paula taught so long ago. It's what my teacher taught. It's what an ancient teacher taught. Love and compassion. I mean, love and compassion for self and others. And that develops through looking at your own stuff. That's the straightforward way, because then your heart softens for yourself and then it can soften for others. Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah. That's where the power is.
Yeah, very wonderful conversation, Barbara. Thank you very much. Well, my last two questions for you will be for listeners, those are inspired by our podcast. Where can they find out more about your work?
Wow. Well, I have two websites, theevolutionoffinance.com. That's all one word.
Hmm.
My company name is Sagesse, which is the French word for wisdom. I lived in France off and on for 30 years, so that word's in my head. And my life goal was around gaining wisdom. So for me, that's what that word is. But it's Sagesse and it's all S's. So SAGESSESRTE.com. And those two websites, one is the author website and the other is actually the platform itself that, can give some initial further detail about what we're talking about. I appreciate you asking that, Mukti. Yeah. And the books, my book, I have my books. So these are the first two. You can see that.
Yeah, well, they can connect with your work through social media, where if you have any social media, so that they can build on this parallel economy rooted in
I'm
love.
on,
Oh,
I'm on LinkedIn as well.
yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
great. Thank you very much for your time. Oh, sorry.
I wish you much success in this endeavor. It's a niche that hasn't been explored, and I think it's a powerful niche, to bring about a lot of positive change. So I applaud your intention and love collaborating with you on this.
Okay, thank you very much, Barbara.
All right, take care, Mukti.
Take care.